as Coach McKeefery alluded to, I'm with the University of Notre Dame, Associate Director of Football Strength Conditioning. And I'm going to talk to you really quick. Again, we've gone through this a few times. Him and I have talked about this, but just going to lay out what we did in the last 2023 football season, talking about in-season training, managing load intensity throughout the entire season. First, you kind of maybe saw this a little bit, but I got Coach McKeefery. I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have prepared the way I have without him. Wouldn't have the position I am, wouldn't be the kind of man I am without his guidance through this field, through life, family, all of that. I got to thank him for that. Gave me a shot to get into a full-time position, gave me a shot when I was just starting out, like he alluded to. So next, I got to thank our head football coach, our head ball coach, Marcus Freeman. The guy's the same from when I met him in 2021, defensive coordinator, and since he's been the head coach, has been the same guy. He's in our weight room before everybody else, before the guys come in, working out, training 6 a.m. Anytime he's in town, he's in the weight room. He's getting there at least once a day, and it kind of drives what he represents. So he says, hey, I get up, I get something hard done right when I get up. First thing of the day, check is something. I did something hard in the morning, right? Nailed my workout, and I'm on to the rest of my day. After that, everything else is easy. Next, at the bottom left of the screen is Rob Hunt in the middle, our athletic trainer. The guy is aggressive. He's not a guy that just, hey, we're going to shelve these guys. Don't touch them, put them in bubble wrap. He's like, we're going to get aggressive and push the guys to get back. Not in a malicious way and not in a way that's going to hinder them down the road, but not a guy that's going to treat him with kid gloves either. Next there, you all know Lauren Lando, the current director of strength conditioning at University of Notre Dame. Just an incredible guy. Has taught me a ton just with the field and just the outside, the inner workings of like his program, how he does things, but also listens to what I have, listens to what I'm recommending, listens to, what pitfalls could come here at Notre Dame. From being here for now, this is going on the 4th season. I've seen some things and experienced things that I've been able to help him out with. And it's incredible to, be a part of that and help really build this, from a new perspective. And lastly, Casey Matoyer is our liaison with sports science. He helps us every single lift, practice, run with GPS or force plays, getting guys tested, getting guys in on the board, and really helping digest the information and get it back to us in a timely manner. So again, it takes a village to help me, I'll say that, but to obviously help run this program. You see the guys that are really, really a part of it. I got to thank our athletes, I thank our guys. We're getting together with carving pumpkins, getting together at the lake, and then having our little special workouts with a lot of our developmental guys last season. We got a little fun during Halloween. As you can tell, this just a normal lift, but one of our special Friday the 13th lifts during Halloween. So the guys really enjoy it. They get to dress up. We try to do those things as when we can, without being too distracting. And Coach McKeefery and I, we've been through it. Guys that have been with us, you've seen special workouts where we get to be a little bit creative, inventive. Some guys doing Thriller while they're doing lateral lunges. It was a pretty good time. And then obviously I have to thank my wife, Valerie, and our little daughter, Georgia. It's the reason why I'm doing this. Reason why you sacrifice and put in the hours is to be able to provide them with everything and provide her with everything. It's a huge reason why you get up in the morning for me. So could not do it without my wife. I couldn't imagine being in a world without those two. It means a ton to me. So talk a little bit about our schedule. And this goes all the way back to June of 2023. We start our summer off season. And everything was a little shifted up because we were playing a week 0 game. So now this has kind of become the norm in 2024 and moving forward with how the playoff works, how everything's going to be moving forward. But for us, we started a week earlier than we normally had in the years prior. Went through the summer, started training camp on July 25th. And then we had to be prepared to fly 7 hours, a 7-hour flight, land in Dublin, Ireland, and play week 0 against a triple option team in Navy, which already we're traveling to a different country. There's a distraction. We started earlier. We're, flying, well outside of our time zone, playing a triple option team in the first game of the year. Tons of distractions. You can list them on and on and on. But our guys prepared. They knew what was going on, and the result spoke for itself. Pretty defensively played really, really well. Opened up offensively really, really well with transfer quarterback and a lot of new pieces, especially as an offensive coordinator first year. It went well for us. Turn around, we fly back to go to US of A. We don't get a bye week. We're right into the next game. What was beautiful about that situation was, as a lot of places would probably want to have a bye week, we jumped into the next game. It was nice to already have a game under our belt. From a training standpoint, we're able to manipulate volumes. I'll get into that later on, but the guys were already into the routine. Because a lot of times you're playing the fire drill on the sidelines of who's where, who's on what, new guys out there. It was a nice, smooth operation when we were out there, even when we got back for that first game. So having that feeling and assurance was great. As we go through as we get into those next few weeks, we had 4 consecutive night games, starting with, playing Ohio State, going into Duke, Louisville, and finishing off against USC. 8 weeks later, we have our first bye week. So we started off week 0, rolled straight through 8 weeks. And it's not hey, you get a little breather week to week, or you get a little leeway because you got a gimme of a game. What I've learned here in the years at Notre Dame is everyone is going to give you your absolute best. If anyone knows who Coach Chris Creighton is, he talks about the wrench. And the wrench is adversity. And you want to have the best. You want somebody's very best. We get that every single week. There's no off. There's no someone's just going to roll over because we're Notre Dame. Everyone wants to beat Notre Dame because of the history that's been and who we are. And we take that on. We take it on every single week. Does not matter. Doesn't matter if college game day's there for the first time. Doesn't matter if they're undefeated, we're undefeated. It does not matter. You have to show up every single week. If you happen to drop one, best thing is that there's another one right after that. So we were able to roll through that pretty well. The one mistake we made is we backed off at a certain time, and we weren't ready to play. And that's something that's going to bother us, but we learned from it. So we finally get into our first bye week, and then it gets split up a little bit with a 2-week sprint. 2 games in there, knock those both out, get into another bye week. So we got 2 late bye weeks, kind of like an NFL situation. Then another 2-week sprint with 2 games, and then we're into the postseason. So it's a little bit of a strange block of a season, but you gotta just focus 1 week at a time. That's all you can do. For those that are kind of want to see when we drill down into it, this is our weekly schedule, weekly in-season schedule. So we're talking, we're into a Monday, we're getting our lifts, and there's a couple lift groups here for our travel guys. And then we want to get our non-travel developmental guys during meetings, so it's pretty uninterrupted. Towards the end of the day, we're able to get them focused, locked in for that hour at 3:30, and we're rolling from there. Tuesday, an optional lift. That's our first day of practice. Optional lift for the developmental guys. Any guy that wants to come in, get a little extra, maybe arm workout, arm pump, or mobility, they're able to come in on that Tuesday. And then between that Wednesday and Thursday, we're getting our day 2 lift for the entire team. And then our practice 2 and 3, which is going to be 2 is going to be our little bit of a harder. We call it Bloody Tuesday. We get after it a little bit, going into Wednesday. It's our one of our harder practices too. Day 2 and 3, and then we're cleaning things up on that Thursday going into Friday. Friday we have our developmental lift. That's where we're really getting after it. That's where we had that Halloween lift, and then we're rolling the walkthrough, going to the hotel, flight, whatever it might be. And Saturday's one of those 12 guaranteed. And then Sunday off, and it all rolls back again. So that's a little bit of our week. Our schedule is works a little differently because we are academics is such a big point at Notre Dame. It's stressed highly stressed with the academics and the athletics are pretty much at the same level. A lot of places you're going to see, hey, academics is a little less, athletics is kind of trumps it. You got to be on top of it, both academically and athletically. We always like to say our 4 or 5-star football players are going against 4 or 5-star students in the classroom. So they got to meet that same standard outside of our walls. And this kind of becomes like who they get to be when they're with us, who they truly are. couple rules we had just for that in-season training. Trying to maintain that frequency. Like we want to keep that same, like I talked about, that same. If you're a guy that is playing a lot, you're playing 30 plus plays, right? You're getting those 2 lifts a week, and we're keeping that frequency. If you're getting less than that, we're looking at 3. If you're getting, if you're a walk on, if you're a developmental guy, you're a guy that's you're not getting that playing time. We'll probably get a little bit more, but we want to make sure you're getting that same frequency week to week. Train with intent, not just intensity. It's one thing to, hey, I want to focus on, hey, lift heavy, lift heavy, lift heavy all year long. You're gonna break down with this type of stress and the type of pounding you're gonna get. So we really look more towards it with intent of how we're training. And I'll get into that with a little bit of our velocity-based training, our force plate numbers than we get during our lifts. We're gonna have a primarily total body focus, especially if we're getting those 2 big lifts. We're gonna hit those. Keep it simple, keep it focused. Can't say that enough. Keep it simple, keep it focused. It doesn't need to be, French contrast here in the season, anything like that, but we're very focused and we're very simple what we're doing. One, they've got game plans, they've got classes, they've got tests. The last thing they need to be focused on is just the little intricacies of lift. Keep it very, very simple with basic movements. Focus on what we're doing. Minimize risk. That kind of goes into the intent training, how we program things. You want to minimize that amount of risk. If we're doing something that's going to cause risk for an athlete not to be available for the field, that's on us. That's a fault on me. That's a fault on our staff and our program that we're not thinking of that first, where they have to be ready to play. The best availability is availability. If we're not able to maintain that, help provide that, then what are we doing? We're too focused on us then, and not thinking about what's important. It's those 12 guaranteed Saturdays. And the last one there's find a way. Find a way to get that done. Hey, I got to find some way to get a max effort lower body lift for this athlete. Coach McKeefery has always said you got to trick them into doing it. Trick them into squatting. They say, I can't back squat. I can't put a bar on my back. I can't do it. Can't front squat. All right, what's a different way we can get around that? Trick them into doing it. Whether that's a belt squat, that's the easy one. Whether that's a heavy split squat, a safety bar squat. What way can we do this? Load it over the course of 3 weeks. Adjust from there. Find another way to do it. That's how we can keep this progressing and not let ourselves get starting to backtrack. Now, this list here is a simple way of putting it. If you don't use it, you lose it, right? So, and there's some very, very granular scientific parts to this where, hey, what we're looking for is to maintain the qualities we've worked our butts off to develop. We really, really do not want to get to that day 27, 29 where our muscular strength drops. We don't want to be at a point where we're losing our VO2 max. We don't want to get to the point where our body fat is getting our body comp is getting totally out of control. We're not able to maintain the explosive capabilities we developed. This is the example that comes to mind is, hey, we got a big game this week. Head coach comes to you or a coach comes to you. Hey, we got a big game this week. Could we back off maybe this week in the week? Only maybe lift once. Well, you make that concession, things go well. The next week, that might not be the same case. They may not want to add that second lift back in or that third lift back in. And then you're missing out on frequency there, missing out on the volume there, missing out on the maintaining of those qualities we're talking about. And next thing you know, it starts to slowly degrade and slowly decline in what we're trying to accomplish, what we're trying to maintain. And then it just becomes, now it's less and less and less and less, and you're trying to squeeze as much as you can into one session that it starts to become a detriment. So that's why we always fight to keep those at least 2 lifts for those guys that are playing a ton. 3 lifts for the guys that aren't playing quite as much, and 3 to 4 for the guys that are redshirt and walk-ons, developmental guys. So because of this kind of thing, it's not something I'm always thinking about where, hey, my mitochondrial activity is starting to drop, 14 days after we've, really last squatted heavy. It's like, okay, well, let's see what we're at and see what stresses we're working around and make sure we're going to work towards that heavier movement, be able to maintain that. Stress for these guys is, it is a normal reaction, like it says there. It's a normal reaction, but these guys are getting stressed in every single different direction you can possibly think of. It's coming from, like I've talked about already, academics, athletics. Those are the biggest two you'll see. But on top of that now, they're not just athletes; they're celebrities at a school like this. They are absolutely celebrities with NIL, with their faces out there. Everyone knows their numbers. They're seeing them on social media. These guys are celebrities, so they're getting that kind of stress. The stress of, hey, what comments are getting said about them after a game. Hey, they had a bad game as a quarterback or had a bad game as a receiver. What's getting said about them on social media? Their girlfriend breaks up with them. They're squatting 400, 500 pounds. That's all stress. All of it's stress, right? How your body figures that out of what's what doesn't quite get there. All it knows is I'm fighting through something. And when it comes to that game time, you've got that fight or flight response. What's going to happen? Am I going to rise to the occasion, or am I going to cower down to my lowest point? And that's where hopefully in our training, we've built them up to be able to stand the stresses of a season, right? We have our little like bell-shaped curve here of the stress we want to be able to apply while making sure our performance is at a high level. So if I'm pushing this athlete and pushing them, but I'm not taking into account the other stresses they might have, our midterm weeks and finals weeks are no joke, along with all the other academic requirements of them. That's no joke. So if I'm not being cognizant of when those midterms are coming up or those finals are coming up, then I'm doing a disservice to the athlete. Hey, I want to have, on the same week as midterms, we're playing SC, I want to squat 90% that week. Probably not going to go very well, to be totally honest. So I got to make sure I'm planning around that. I know I got midterms coming up. I got a big game coming up. And I still want to make sure I'm hitting our numbers and percentages that I feel we need to hit in order to maintain the type of power, the type of strength that we need to have to last throughout the season. Or I got to work through and around those pieces and parts. Or if I still need to, and it's within our progression, or it's within our strength progression, then okay, I got to maybe turn down the volume, where I can still keep intensity but keep a lower volume for these guys, and then stay kind of more in that yellow world, where if I get too little, where we're talking about that 1 week a lift or one lift a week scenario, we get a little too much more underloaded. And if I go, hey, midterms, playing a big game, 90% on squat, and my girlfriend broke up with me, these guys can be all the way to the right, and that performance is going to go down the drain real fast. This is this little reservoir analogy I really, really like. I like to think of it as like we're building this reservoir as high as we possibly can in our off seasons between summer, building this up as high as we possibly can, as full as we possibly can, and then that season is just a slow drip. Week after week after week, you can get back to a certain point, but it's never going to be back full strength. It's never going to be back to that highest level. So the higher we can make that, the better we can make that. We're just trying to patch it up with that sleep, nutrition, and recovery. The drain or that drip there you see on the right, that's like a snippet, like I talked about, of what they're actually going through, with our guys at least. So you got to remember that reservoir, as high as you can make that, and as robust as you can make that, to help maintain and last throughout that entire season. Because you're going to get to, especially this year, you're going to get to December, January, and you're going to see how good that training ends up being by the time you get there. How much you prepared them, how much you've helped them to withstand throughout that entire season. That's gonna be a big interesting. You may not think, hey, in June we're preparing them for January, but it makes a difference. It really does. So I alluded to this a little bit. I talked about this before, but some of the technologies that we implement here at the University of Notre Dame, leap form, velocity-based training systems, catapult, vault, with our force plates, NordBoard, our Dari. Dari is a motion capture movement assessment, essentially like a FMS, but with none of the other tools. You don't need a stick, you don't need a board, you don't need a band. Essentially, can tell us what mobility limitations we have between ankles, hips, thoracic extension, rotation, external rotation, and internal rotation of the shoulder. Right? Where am I lacking from top to bottom as an athlete? We're taking through various movements between a lateral lunge, an overhead squat, a split squat, a couple of jumps to assess valgus varus of the knee. we can take that. A lot of it, yes, can be seen by the naked eye, but it can actually provide a percentage of what is a passing grade, say of ankle mobility, or feeling grade of ankle mobility for what they need to be doing. And this is a real time capture of their mobility of those joints. So from there, we're able to take those and put our correctives or our weak links up there for our guys to see individually. And we'll throw those at the end of the lift, and I'll show you in a minute. But with each of those, we're using all to tell an athlete, story of an athlete, how powerful they are, how fast they run, how far they run, what their player load is, what kind of power output they're putting on those force plates. And for our runners, our guys that are putting out power and distance, our skill guys, our mid guys, how are those hamstrings holding up through the course of a season? So again, getting now into a little bit of what we're looking at for a day one lift layout. This is going to be the soonest day after a game. So for us, it's going to be, this is our Monday lift season. For our warm up here, if any of you guys have heard of a Matt Wenning, he does a thing called Wenning warm up. So Wenning warm up consists of 3 different exercises, and we're rolling through 2 to 4 sets, and we're working on something that provides knee flexion, quad, hip, post chain, any of that core mobility. We're hitting that for 2 to 4 sets of 10 to 20 reps. Again, it's really just focused on more of a potentiation of the muscle groups, potentiation of what we're going to be using in that lift. And it's actually been very, very helpful for our athletes to just kind of get warm and moving, where it's very lightweight. Could be just body weight, could be band, could be a kettlebell, something light. Just go through those ranges of motion and go through those flexions of our ankle joints, knees, hips, just to get that moving, especially a few days after my game to get us going again. We'll always start with a Olympic variation, and that's where we work in our force plate jump. So from an organization standpoint, a lot of people get kind of caught up with when to jump. Is it when they first walk in the room, when they're leaving the room, is it during it? We kind of use this again as potentiation for the jump, because I want to get their very best output they've got. Might only be 80%. It might be their very best. I want to see what exactly they've got. So I want to do this when they're warm. I want to do this while they're in some of their warm-up sets for their Olympic variation, when they're in their work sets of their Olympic variation. I want to see their very, very best in that. So that's when we'll work in our force plate jumps, is with our clean, our high pulls, our rack pulls, something like that. Then we'll have our squat variation. We'll work different modes and different modalities based on position groups, bigs, mids, and skills. And then we'll get our a secondary upper variation. We'll get our primary on the next day. A post chain variation for our guys that are chronic hamstring repeat offenders, or guys that come up with, I've got tight hamstring, sore hamstring one side. I want to see where they're at. I'd love to know where they're at when it's, this guy ran a bunch of high speed explosive efforts, or they just had a lot of yardage that game. I want to see kind of where they're at after that game. But then we're tracking them weekly, especially wide receivers, like I said, repeat offenders with any kind of hamstring issues. And then we're always saying some kind of neck trap. That's something we want to make sure we're getting this nice strong neck, protect that brain. And then, as I touched on before, that lower body corrective. They're warm, they're engaged. Sometimes when you try to do something like I was talking about with the force plate jumps, same thing with the correctives. They're doing it when they're first coming in the room. You're kind of a little bit zombie-ish, especially if it's at 7 a.m. on a Monday, 8 a.m. on a Monday. The afternoons are a little bit better, but those lower body correctives, we're doing it towards the end of the workout. They're warm, they're engaged, they're focused, and it's the last things they're doing before they leave, before they're done with their workout. A little bit more engagement out of that. We roll into our day 2. Same idea with that Wenning warm up with that upper body. We're working our upper body push, our tricep, lat, posterior shoulder. Again, more core mobility in there. And then we'll hit our Olympic variation triple extension, another round of force plate. We'll always try to test those twice in a week. And I'll get into a little more of why we like to test that twice in a week. But that's, again, from an organizational standpoint, we'd like to have those done with our clean variation, our Olympic variation, and our speed squat variation. I'll get into that in a little bit. Get our heavy press, our heavy pull to match in terms of volume and intensity, neck trap, upper body corrective, and that keeping the pecs loosened up, the posterior shoulder strong, opening up that upper body and not letting ourselves get too tight. This is a lot of information on the sheet, but you guys can ask me for this and take this however you need. But this is just our in-season strength progression. How we kind of took things from, hey, week 0, we were giving a little more range with those weights, and then we start dialing things in as you get into the season. But like I was saying, as we get towards that week of, week 8, we're hitting 83 as our higher percentage on our squat, and then we backed it down after that and started changing things. This is just one way we've done it for our bigs. So we're able to have that kind of set up for our skills. It was maybe a little different. And then definitely in that bowl prep, we had things very, very separated for our line, big skill, and skill guys. Same thing on our upper body. You can see that as well too. On our lead form progression, we hit this pretty much for everybody throughout the entire season. Monday, or the day 1 lift, we're just keeping it to one upper body or one Olympic variation or elite form movement. And then on day 2, we're getting maybe a speed squat with a trap bar jump shrug, a hang shrug pull along with those barbell speed squats. Yes, you'll notice barbell speed squats kept all the way through the entire year. We'll go into a little bit of that in a sec, but with our elite form system, it's a little different, somewhat seen, but it's a video camera based laser tracking system that'll track strictly the bar, and you're telling how much weight you've got on, so it can adjust for watts. But we're looking at that meters per second, and I love to program off of that because it gives us a range of where we need to be and how we need to accomplish what we're trying to accomplish. Also, a great way to kind of limit how heavy a guy can go, or keeping them safe, making sure that we're not providing risk that shouldn't be in terms of weight and intensity. So we can always see when an athlete is starting to get to that tipping point of too fatigued. If I'm saying, hey, I want you on a speed working between 1 and 0.75, and this guy's all the way in the dumpster back over on 0.5, probably too slow, too much weight to move for that right now. So we adjust that weight, we reduce that weight, but this is how we're driving intent too. This is how because it's a competition with our guys. They love to compete. They love to see numbers. This is a way to make sure that we're providing that same stimulus with that speed of the bar that we want. So going back into why we have those speed squats throughout the entire season. So with that speed squat, we'll keep a constant of a 40%. So that's always their first set. They'll have a warm up. We'll go to a 40% first set. After that, we'll work in a 3-week wave of 45%, 50%, and 55%. And we'll work that in throughout a 3-week wave. But we keep this 40% in because I want to see, as that constant works throughout a 3-week wave, where are we going in terms of our peak power? Weight is the exact same. How does that change week to week? So for one of our guys here, you can kind of see as the season went on, that power is able to increase. Week 9, this person had a little bit of an injury. So we had to drop the weight a little bit, be able to adjust, and then we were able to get back on track towards the end of the season, weeks 10, 11, 12. But this is what we wanted to see. That was a nice, easy upswing and uptick in power as we went through the season. And we were able to compare our positional speed squat. We also do this with our clean peak power as well too. Naturally, the peak power will go up with our 3-week wave of our 45, 50, 55%. But that also we'll be able to see, okay, where they actually move. Does that 55, that 45, 50, and 55%, does that change? Does that move as they get maybe stronger throughout the year? Is their max squat changing? Is that increasing? So then by that regard, those peak powers of those would change too in that 45, 50, and 55%. But for us, this kind of is another way of checking, are we overloading athletes? Are we doing too much? Are we doing too little? Right? Are we providing the right stimuluses that these athletes need? So this is a nice little graph for us throughout the year. Like I talked about, we'll have our force plate data. I talked about how we'll test twice in a week. With our force plates that we'll test twice in a week, we'll get it Monday. So again, we know that's going to be one of the tougher days to get the guys motivated to get going. And it's a couple days out from the game. So they're going to be sore. We expect that. We like to check fatigue with these. We like to check our fatigue on a Monday when we're closest to that last game, and then on a Wednesday or Thursday, depending on when they're lifting, to see, okay, have we recovered? How are we handling the stress of the week of practice? What is that looking like? Are we back to our normal, or are we still back to where we were on that Monday? Now, this is on a 30-day rolling average, because we know, hey, their best, like I talked about that reservoir, they're not going to necessarily get back to that best every single time. So as the season goes on, are we trending downwards too much, or are we staying in a nice, not necessarily a plateau, but are we maintaining that same power that we had at the beginning of that, in that 30-day window? And we'll progress that straight through the season. Now with this, you can see, hey, jump height was going up, our explosiveness, all the good things that we're looking for. Eccentric time to break, actually we want to go shorter. That how fast can we stop? And as we look at the drive for a position group like a D line or an offensive line, their drive is very, very important. That initial impulse, that's what we want to see go up. So we're trending in a great direction with a lot of it. Now, do we have little dips and valleys and peaks? Absolutely. But we have this nice trend we're going upwards, which is awesome to see. Like I talked about, we have our Notre board data as well. This is a team. This is just based on a team. I can drill down and get to the nitty-gritty of individual athletes, but you can see where we're kind of trying to maintain that same power and strength average throughout the week, or throughout the weeks, I should say. I think we were able to do a pretty good job. I think throughout the season we had two soft tissue injuries in terms of hamstrings. Those were early on in the season, and it was a little bit of a snowball effect. So not perfect by any means, but that's where we learned from. Going into our catapult practice data and practice management. So this again goes into how we'll work our weeks. Coach Freeman is really good about having these types of practices to push guys, as well as knowing when to pull back. Our camp was really, really cool to see. We were able to go 4 days on, 1 off, and one of those, that last day of that fourth day was actually a night practice. So it gives guys a little bit more time in between practices, but you're able to see, hey, this first practice of the week is going to be a yellow day. You can see there what that would mean in terms of Excel work, sprinting, overall distance covered, and player load if that's something you're looking at. But then period count and really sticking to that. And the next day, hey, it's going to be more of a blue, and then we go into a yellow, and then that last day is going to be more of a red. Sometimes that red gets blurred into how intense that practice is in terms of contact, especially for our big guys. So it kind of blurs a little bit. Sometimes you may see, depending on the situation, that may be a yellow for our skill guys because, hey, we got into more red zone, play it out situations where it gets into a little more short yardage, but it ends up being red for our big guys. Some of those days we're intending it to be red for the entire team, yellow for the entire team. It ends up being more blue because we have more passing situations, and that may trend more red for our skill guys because they end up running out a little bit more. It's all situational. It's all learning and kind of understanding what we're looking for, what we're planning, and what our expectations are. Now I think we're getting a little more dialed in. That just comes from that chart on the left. The chart on the right is actually what we would get after a practice. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe this is after one of our games. So if you take a look at it, and you'll be able to see you have your accelerations, your hits, your overall for our linemen there and linebackers. You'll be able to see where that bar slides to in that middle. You're able to see, okay, what was it for them? And then the color of it dictates what that ranks within the position and how that averages in the position. So that may be high for that person and high for the position, or low for that person and high for the position based on their level and their what they're used to in that block. So you may have a veteran player where it might not be too much for them, but it's average for the group. You can get that out of your older players, the 6-year guys. And then on the far right, you'll see what that recommendation is for it. So for after a game, that would make sense to be requesting it to be low or very low that next day. With that being said, went through a lot of information. I'd like to open up for any questions or comments.